to continue my journey to Palermo. Herr M. was kind enough to send one of his clerks with me. I rested for half an hour, then commenced my peregrination. From the steamer Messina had appeared to me a very narrow place, but on entering the town I found that I had made quite a false estimate of its dimensions. Messina is certainly built in a very straggling oblong form, but still its breadth is not inconsiderable. I saw many beautiful squares, for instance the chief square, with its splendid fountain ornamented with figures, and a bas relief of carved work in bronze. Every square contains a fountain, but we seldom find anything particularly tasteful. The churches are not remarkable for the beauty of their facades, nor do they present anything in the way of marble statues or finely executed pictures. The houses are generally well built, with flat roofs. The streets, with few exceptions, are narrow, small, and very dirty. An uncommonly broad street runs parallel with the harbor, and contains, on one side at least, some very handsome houses. This is a favorite place for a walk, for we can here see all the bustle and activity of the port. Several of the palaces also are pretty. That appropriated to the Senate is the only one which can be called fine, the staircase being constructed entirely of white marble, in a splendid style of architecture. The halls and apartments are lofty, and generally arched. The regal palace is also a handsome pile. In the midst of the town I found an agreeable public garden. The Italians appear, however, to choose the streets as places of rendezvous, in preference to enclosures of this kind, for everywhere I noticed that the garden walks were empty, and the streets full. But on the whole there is not nearly so much life here as at Catania. In order to obtain a view of the whole of Messina and its environs, I ascended a hill near the town, surmounted by a Capuchin convent. Here I enjoyed a prospect which I have seldom seen equalled. As I gazed upon it I could easily imagine that an inhabitant of Messina can find no place in the world so beautiful as his native town. The promontory against which the town leans is clothed with a carpet of the brightest green, planted with fruit trees of all kinds, and enlivened with scattered towns, villages, and country seats. Beautiful roads, appearing like white bands, intersect the mountains on every side in the direction of the town. The background is closed by high mountains, sometimes wooded, sometimes bare, now rising in the form of Alps, now in the shape of rocky masses. At the foot of the hills we see the long-drawn town, the harbor with its numerous ships, and beyond it groups of Alps and rocks. The boundless sea flows on the spectator's right and left towards Palermo and Naples, while in the direction of Catania the eye is caught by mountains, with Etna towering among them. The same evening I embarked on board the Duke of Calabria, for the short trip of 12 or 14 hours to Palermo. This steamer has only engines of 80 horsepower, and everything connected with it is small and confined. The first-class accommodation is indeed pretty good, but the second-class places are only calculated to contain very few passengers. Though completely exhausted by my long and fatiguing walk through Messina, I remained on deck, for I could not be happy without seeing Stromboli. Unfortunately I could distinguish very little of it. We had started from Messina at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and did not come in sight of the mountain until 2 hours later, when the shades of night were already descending. We were, besides, at such a distance from it that I could descry nothing but a colossal mass rising from the sea and towering toward heaven. I stayed on deck until past 10 o'clock in the hope of obtaining a nearer view of Stromboli, but we had soon left it behind us in the far distance, with other islands which lay on the surface like misty clouds. October 7th. To-day I hastened on deck before sunrise, to see as much as possible of the Sicilian coast, and to obtain an early view of Palermo. At 10 o'clock we ran into the harbor of this town. I had been so charmed with the situation of Messina that I did not expect ever to behold anything more lovely, and yet the remembrance of this town faded from my mind when Palermo rose before me, surrounded by magnificent mountains, among which the colossal rock of St. Rosalia, a huge slab of porphyry and granite, towered high in the blue air. The combination of various colors unites with its immense height and its peculiar construction to render this mountain one of the most remarkable in existence. Its summit is crowned by a temple, and a good road, partly cut out of the rock, partly supported on lofty pillars of masonry, which we can see from on board our vessel, leads to the convent of St. Rosalia, and to a chapel hidden among the hills and dedicated to the same saint. At the foot of this mountain lies a gorgeous castle, inhabited, as my captain told me, by an English family, who pay a yearly rent of 30,000 florins for the use of it. To the left of Palermo the mountains open and show the entrance to a broad and transcendently beautiful valley, in which the town of Montreal lies with magical effect. Several of these gaps occur along the coast, affording glimpses of the most lovely vales, with scattered villages and pretty country seats. The harbour of Palermo is picturesque and eminently safe. The town numbers about 130,000 inhabitants. Here, too, our deck was crowded with facchini, innkeepers, and guides before the anchor was fairly lowered. I inquired of the captain respecting the price of board and lodging, and afterwards made a bargain with the host before leaving the ship. By following this plan I generally escaped overcharge and inconvenience. Arriving at the inn, I sent to Herr Schmidt, to whom I had been recommended, with the request that he would dispatch a trustworthy cicerone to me, and make me a kind of daily scheme of what I was to see. This was soon done, and after hurrying over my dinner I commenced my wanderings. I entered almost every church I passed on my way, and found them all neat and pretty. Everywhere I came upon picturesque villas and handsome houses, with glass doors instead of windows, their lower portion guarded by iron railings, and forming little balconies. Here the women and girls sit of an evening, working and talking to their heart's content. The streets of Palermo are far handsomer and cleaner than those of Messina. The principal among them, Toledo and Cassaro, divide the town into 4 parts, and join in the chief square. The streets, as we pass from one into another, present a peculiar appearance, filled with bustling crowds of people moving noisily to and fro. In the Toledo street all the tailors seem congregated together, for the shops on each side of the way are uniformly occupied by the votaries of this trade, who sit at work half in their houses and half in the street. In the coffee houses and shops are all open, so that the passers-by can obtain a full view of the wares and of the buyers and sellers. The regal palace is the handsomest in the town. It contains a Gothic chapel, richly decorated. The walls are entirely covered with paintings in mosaic, of which the drawings do not display remarkable taste, and the ceiling is overcrowded with decorations and arabesques. An ancient chandelier, in the form of a pillar, made of beautiful marble and also covered with arabesques, stands beside the pulpit. On holy days an immense candle is put in this candlestick and lighted. I wished to enter this chapel, but was refused admittance until I had taken off my hat, like the men, and carried it in my hand. This custom prevails in several churches of Palermo. The space in front of the palace resembles a garden, from the number of avenues and beds of flowers with which it is ornamented. Second in beauty is the palace of the Senate, but it cannot be compared with that at Messina. End of section 35.